What if getting healthy isn't about what you think it's about? How many times have you tried eating right and working out like crazy, and you either don't lose weight at all, you don't lose as much as you expected, it's so hard and you get barely any results, or you do get results and you don't keep it off long term? So maybe what you're doing or not doing isn't the real issue after all. So let's talk about what the real deal is. It's what's going on the inside. It's about strengthening your personal core, not anything physical. It's all in your mind and in your emotions. Welcome to the Women Rockin Midlife podcast, Soulful Wellness to elevate your second act. This is the podcast dedicated to empowering midlife women to thrive and rock their way through this transformative phase of life. Hi, I'm your hostess, Jen Kunkel. Join me as we explore this midlife thing together, and I guide you on a soulful journey of holistic wellness and self-discovery, ultimately leading you and us to our best, most energetic, most fulfilling life. Hey, so this is episode 6. We're still kind of just getting started here. And this is part 3 in a series of 5 parts on this personal core strengthening principle that I created about 20 years ago or so. Now, I expose myself to a lot of variety in terms of self-development, and I am in groups and associate with people online that talk about having a spiritual awakening. It's people that are maybe in their late 20s to 30s, maybe even early 40s, that are talking about this the most. And it's all age ranges. They're talking about having a spiritual awakening like it was one singular event. And that just seems weird to me. It doesn't quite resonate that way for me. I was in my 20s when I started down this personal development path, and I will say that all these people talking about spiritual awakenings are talking about the same kind of things, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes in a different context. So they're saying, oh, when did you have your spiritual awakening, or to each other, or they're saying, yeah, I had my spiritual awakening in 2017, or I had my spiritual awakening 3 years ago. And I just keep feeling like a spiritual awakening isn't actually a one-time event. And I'm going to do an entire episode about this probably and see how that's connected with health and everything. Right now, I'm just linking it up with what we're talking about here. I feel like a spiritual awakening is really a deeper awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and the nature of reality. And to me, that's all the same as personal development, personal growth, emotional and mental growth, and spiritual growth. And really, it's science, neuroscience. It's all about what's going on in our brains. I'm going to do a whole episode about the neuroscience and how maybe that's the same as a spiritual awakening. My point, though, is that this personal core strengthening concept came to me when I was at that age too, in my 30s. It was after I got divorced and I was leaving my career to pursue something that actually mattered to me, that made me feel like I had purpose and that I was doing something that was actually going to better the world in a way that fulfilled my soul. I was a chemical engineer and I was working at a job where I worked for a company that manufactured computer chips. So yeah, I could have justified that I was doing something helpful, purposeful, that I was helping to provide people with computer chips so that they had access to technology so that they could do whatever it is that they do more easily via computer. Because before that, shortly before that, people went to the library to do research and all that. So that was pretty much the beginning of the internet age. So yeah, I could have justified it and said, okay, I'm actually helping people here. My soul knew that that wasn't true though. So I ended up leaving and pursuing other avenues, coaching and training, and just diving deeper into personal development and health and wellness. And I'm combining all of those now for you, which is so fun and so interesting because it really does all tie together. If you want to call it spiritual wellness, your emotional and your mental wellness is totally connected to your physical wellness. There is no separation. It's not like, oh, this only affects your mental wellness. No, your mental wellness affects your physical wellness and vice versa. And it's all tied to your emotions. It's all one. It's all tied together. So that's why it's so important to focus on these 12 core principles that are part of my personal core strengthening program or model. If you don't have this grasp and understanding of these principles and have a healthy relationship with these traits and characteristics, then your health is just not optimal. And you might have a hard time realizing how they're connected. But hopefully, the longer you stick with me, the more you'll see it, the more you'll realize, wow, this really is connected. It all affects my wellness, my health, and my well-being, and ultimately, the quality of your life, and maybe even how long you're going to live with a quality life. So what kind of issues might you be experiencing, especially at this stage of life, right? I know because I experienced them too. Gaining weight, sometimes having a really hard time losing weight without feeling like you have to do everything extreme. And I have my theories about a lot of this too. Bloat, inflammation, low energy. Who takes afternoon naps, right? Or wishes you could? Maybe you have difficulty sleeping. You're dealing with night sweats, hot flashes. Maybe you get moody, frustrated, feel depressed, anxious. All of these things are things that can happen anytime in your life, especially at midlife for women. These are totally common. Most of us are going through some form of it or another. I thankfully, knock on wood, have not had really the hot flashes or night sweats. I get like little, maybe warm flashes every now and then. Hopefully it stays that way. Today, we are continuing our discussion on personal core strengthening and what we can do to strengthen that inner core so that we can start to become healthier from the inside out. So today we're talking about the second 3 principles. Last time we talked about love, trust, and gratitude because those kind of tie together. Now today the 3 we're talking about tie together even more closely. There's no particular order, just some of them kind of work more together. All right, so today we're talking about compassion, forgiveness, and kindness. and they all tie together very nicely, very tightly. Compassion lets you forgive more easily, and it also helps you in being kind. But why does that matter? Like, who cares, right? Can't I just go around life being an asshole? Yeah, I mean, you can. But think about this. I'm going to talk about each one individually. Think about this. Do you really feel good if you're just being a jerk or an asshole all the time? If you're thinking in that kind of, it's kind of like an low energy vibe, not like energy like, oh, I'm tired, or oh, I have, a lot of energy, I can actively physically do stuff, but the energy of like how you're feeling, how you're vibing, right? Like feeling like icky energy, like, oh, that person's really negative, or that person is kind of giving me like a bad gut feeling, like that kind of energy. Or, ooh, I really love being around this person. I love how they make me feel. So when you're strengthening your personal core traits, you're going to start to become that kind of person that has that high energy vibe that makes people feel good and they want to be around you, and that's more exciting. Now, if you're in this low energy vibe right now where you're like, ugh, I just hate people, I don't want them to want to be around me, then that might not sound appealing. But think about this for a minute, okay? Is that really the kind of energy you want to go through life with? Now, you don't have to be this vigorous, bubbly, vivacious. I think I put two words together there. Vivacious and gregarious. I'm making up words now. Let's just go with it. That's cool. All right, so let's start with compassion. We're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, and a little bit about how to strengthen it. And as always, in my whole 6 episodes, I'm going to give you some actionable contemplation questions at the end, and we'll have a download too for you to go through it. I'm actually going to have the downloads ready. I got everything set up on the website so you can start accessing the downloads, hopefully by the time this episode is out. Thanks for being with me at the beginning, and if you're listening to this later, hopefully you're like, wow, yeah, she's come a long way. Either way. All right, so compassion, what is it? We're not really going with Webster definitions. This is what I mean when I'm talking about compassion from the perspective of personal core strength. Compassion is about acknowledging the humanness of humans, other humans, and yourself. Having compassion for other people and for yourself. It's about acknowledging that we all do the best we can in any given moment. Even if sometimes that so-called quote-unquote best totally sucks. Because I know sometimes the best does suck. Some of you may have had parents who were not the best. Personally, my dad was not really around when I was a kid. I mean, he was there, kind of. My parents ended up getting divorced. My dad was kind of in and out, I guess, at sometimes. And I really felt like he just didn't care that much. So I didn't even go see him all the time. Like, we would go see him on the weekends when we still lived in the same town. And I remember at least once telling my mom, I don't want to go, because I just felt like it didn't really matter to him that I was there. And then after they got I mean, they were already split up or whatever, but after they got divorced for good and that was it, we moved to Las Vegas and he still lived in Wisconsin. And I would go back for the summers. This was like, I was like 9. And by the time I was 15, he had actually moved to Oklahoma. But by the time I was 15, I didn't want to go anymore. I actually found out that he was coming to Vegas for business and he didn't ask to see us. I didn't tell my brother until we were older about that. But in my head, I basically was like, okay, if he actually shows up here for his work thing and doesn't even tell us he's here, doesn't even want to see us even for an hour or something, I'm just done. So that happened. He came, he didn't say anything about it. And I didn't talk to him for about 8 years until my little brother graduated. He was living with him by then in Oklahoma. So I did go for his graduation. We kind of started mending fences then. And it got better. And we ultimately had a pretty good relationship until he passed away 3 years ago. So anyway, his best at the time totally sucked. And I was able to move past that and have a relationship with him anyway. And I will say his best, even leading up to that, wasn't all that great because I pretty much had to initiate everything. And I decided, okay, I want to be a person who has a relationship with her father. Like, I wanted a dad. And I decided to do everything within my power to give it a chance. I mean, of course, he could have totally screwed it up. He didn't. It was okay and it got better over the years. So I was very happy that I was able to have compassion and recognize that even though, you could look at a world of shoulds and say, well, he's the dad, he's the parent. He should have been reaching out to you, right? And yes, I had those words with myself sometimes. And then I said, well, this is how it is anyway. And I moved forward based on that. So why does it matter to have compassion? It matters because of kind of what I just said. If you choose to hold grudges or dig your heels in and say, this is how it should be, this is how it's supposed to be, you may miss out. I mean, even those 8 years, my dad's gone now for 3, well, actually going on 4 years now. And sometimes I think, wow, that's 8 years that I missed out on. And it kind of sucks. Anyway, if I could have had compassion sooner, I mean, there is no going back. Maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out the same way. So I don't really do regrets too much. And yeah, that thought does pass through my mind sometimes that, wow, that's 8 years that basically I subtracted from our relationship because I decided not to talk to him for all that time. Why does compassion matter in terms of your health? Well, when you don't have compassion for other people, you end up having thoughts like blame, bitterness, like being bitter, guilt, maybe shame, if you're not having compassion for yourself, feeling inadequate. And then there's this kind of little piece, right? Where you go about your day and maybe you feel frustrated or annoyed with other people because they're not doing things the way that you'd like them to do. I think that specifically might bring into play like personality styles, like the personality style that likes to be in control, like an A-type personality, gets frustrated when people think slowly or don't pick up on things as quickly. How do I know this? Oh, I might be that type. Yeah, so sometimes I find myself getting frustrated if I have to explain myself like more fully than I think I need to. Like I'll think when I'm not in the best frame, right? When I'm not demonstrating compassion that people are different than me, I get frustrated when I feel like other people are thinking too slowly because I think really fast. And I don't always fully explain myself because I just assume that they're picking it up. And I might start a conversation and then talk about some other things and then pick up that old conversation and the other person's lost. And I'm like, what do you mean? We were just talking about that. So I can find myself getting frustrated about that. I also have analytical components to me, so that ties in together. So if you are like one of the kind of people that's like a life of the party kind of person, you might get frustrated with people who are trying to tell you too many details and you just want to get to the fun part. So whenever people are being different than you are, you can experience like frustration and feeling impatient, annoyed, irritated, or irritable. And that's not good for your own health. So not only can it be damaging to your relationships because you might be snapping at somebody or you just brush them off, if you're that promoter life of the party kind of person and you want to get to the good stuff, you want to get to the fun, and this other person who has this analytical type personality is explaining all the details to you and like, I don't even care. And then their feelings get hurt because they feel like they're not being heard. So you have all these different dynamics going on in the world, in your relationships. And if you can step back and say, okay, I know people are different than me. I know they think differently than me, and it doesn't make them wrong. It's just different. That's all. It's not the way I would do it, and that's okay. I can have compassion for that. And that way, you don't get so stressed out. So if you're going through life getting frustrated with everybody who's doing things differently than you, and those thoughts and feelings consume you, it creates stress. It is extremely unhealthy to perpetuate that and have that over a long period of time, right? You could have heart issues, depression, anxiety. It drains your energy to always try to be controlling other people and situations. And ultimately, when you experience stress all the time, you have this kind of, I don't really want to say negative energy, but it kind of is. It's like this heavy, weighing energy that feels chaotic and it feels like you're trying to control, but you're not able to. It really drains your energy, and it ultimately leads to a general feeling of not being well. Do you ever just feel like this chaos and you feel haggard? Haggard? Is that the word? Yeah. You feel, just all flustered and like you're disheveled and like your whole life is in disarray. And then next thing you know, you're feeling like this for weeks. Next thing you know, you're sick because the stress has suppressed your immune system and you caught something. What do you think that's doing to your body over the long term? So it makes you susceptible maybe to a virus, a cold, or something like that. Imagine if you are living your entire life like this, feeling that stress, and you're going to possibly end up with something more chronic than just a cold. So all of this can be resolved by having compassion for your fellow humans. All right, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Really, though, it's key. It is a big, big deal. And I know how hard it can be to have compassion for someone that you don't understand. So maybe you don't understand, and it's just something little like, oh my gosh, why are you driving that way? Or it's something big like, wow, why did you not care about me when I was a child? No matter what, the feelings are very similar. I know it sounds wild, and it's true. The small things can be just as harmful as the big things when it's constant, when you're dealing with it all the time. So, the really beautiful thing about compassion is it leads to the next principle we're going to talk about, which is forgiveness. When you learn how to have compassion, it actually makes it really easy to forgive. You might say, yeah, I know it's important to forgive, but there's this one person who did this one thing and it's unforgivable. Okay, I get it. Here's the deal. Forgiveness is not about forgiving for you. I am sure you've heard this before. Maybe you haven't. I've heard it all over the place. Forgiveness really is for you. You may have heard the saying about resentment or revenge is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die or get sick or whatever. Resentment and unforgiveness actually eats away at you, okay? It's like something, even if you don't think about it all the time, if you haven't really released and let go and forgiven another person, you can have these patterns that keep coming up. And they can affect your health, they can affect your weight, they affect your behavior patterns, right? These patterns are affecting how you move through life. And if you haven't forgiven someone for something that you feel they have wronged you, whether they did or not, if you feel like someone wronged you and you didn't forgive them, that's still in your energy field. It's still part of your imprint, part of the pattern that you're projecting out onto the world. And it's going to show up in the kinds of things you attract. It's going to show up in your behaviors. And it's kind of like if you're experiencing self-sabotage, it's possible that you have some kind of resentment that you have not forgiven someone for. Maybe even yourself. Maybe you're not forgiving yourself for something. So you have to really take a look at that and see what's going on. This is a really big thing. Like I said before, I could actually do an entire episode, or even I could do month-long trainings on each one of these. Really, you can go so deep. For now, though, let's just look at this, let's just look at this on a surface level. The initial, we'll just narrow in on one little area here. So forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. And I know that can be really difficult to grasp and difficult to do. And I'm sure you're in your head right now listing out all kinds of scenarios. What about Hitler? What about child molesters? What about this? What about that? Yeah, I know, I get it. Some of these things are really difficult and it's not so cut and dry. Let me ask you this though. If you did experience something that was really horrific, that someone did something really, really horrible to you, I do believe that at some point you can grow to the point where you recognize that your life is better because of it. Or maybe better isn't exactly the right word. you wouldn't be you without it. You wouldn't be on the path that you're on. And I don't even want to go too deep into this right now because we're just touching the surface, and that is a way more advanced way of looking at it. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind right now. And if you have something that truly feels unforgivable, maybe that's the thing that you do want to focus on. And if you don't get there, that's okay. Have compassion for yourself and know that it's okay. So at the end, I'm going to share with you an exercise that you can do that is so powerful, and it will help you kind of start to move through if you have a situation that you feel like is eating at you and you'd like to start forgiving. And I'm sure we all have something, even if it's just to forgive yourself. I did this exercise actually with a whole bunch of different things when I came up with it. I call it the love letters exercise. And I'll just tell you, like, real quick right now. It's about letting yourself feel whatever you really feel, journaling about it, get angry, get pissed. That's cool because your feelings are totally valid. And then as I did that, it actually evolved into something else, and it hit me that this would be a good way to experience forgiveness, because even as angry as I was and like spewing hateful stuff, I ultimately ended in forgiveness and letting that go. So I was letting it go out of my energy field so that it didn't like suppress me anymore. So the way that I see this, it's kind of like all of these things that have happened to us in our lives create this kind of shell over us. Like it's like we have this really great, vibrant, healthy energy. And my grandmother used to say, she was Jehovah's Witness, she used to say that God created us to live forever. And, I don't know. I'm not Jehovah's Witness. I'm not even very religious. I'm not religious at all, actually. I have my beliefs. I won't get into it because really beliefs are beliefs. That's it. Bottom line, short version is I don't believe that we can know from this realm of existence. I know. Anyway, she used to say that. So if that's true, if we were created to live forever, that kind of clicks with what I'm talking about and the way that I theorize we work, right? So it feels like we have this energy that's naturally healthy, vibrant, it's expansive and all inclusive, and it creates this healthy physical body that does live forever, let's say, right? And then we have this stuff happen in our lives. We are exposed to all this conditioning in society, and it's like each thing is like, say, a piece of wet clay, right? That gets kind of thrown onto our energy field. And eventually it starts sticking, and then it starts to dry and it starts to harden, and more of this stuff is piled onto our energy field, and it becomes like we're encased in this hardened mud or pottery, this ceramic or something, this hardened clay shell that just hardens around us, and it pushes our energy down, and it keeps it in, or maybe it keeps some of our energy out, where we are disconnected from it even. The reason I threw that last part in is because I've been doing this meditation where you call your own energy back in, and it's really cool. So I'll share that with you sometime too. I don't know if you got a good picture from that description, but that's what it feels like. It feels like the energy, like my healthy energy, is just being suppressed by all of this mud that hardens into this clay, that hardens into this shell, that traps the energy in, maybe even disconnects from some of my energy. When we release and forgive, it's like it cleans off a piece of that hardened clay. It's like chiseling off a chunk, right? You forgive, it kind of falls away, and your healthy, regenerative, abundant, infinite energy can just shine through, and it pierces that clay. Doesn't that feel healthier though? Do the exercise at the end and see how you feel. I think you'll be able to connect a little bit with what I'm talking about. And then the third principle that we're going to talk about today is kindness. So simple, right? We go from all this really deep, your energy is being suppressed by all the damn clay that's been thrown at you your whole life, to let's just feel happy and joyful and be kind to each other. And you know what? It really is that simple. So kindness is also tied into compassion. It's about connecting with one another's humanity, with our own humanity, because you are not only being kind to other people, it's also about being kind to yourself. I think probably a kindness to ourselves is the area where most of us can improve the most. We forget, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to do this for somebody else. And then we forget to be kind to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. You didn't lose the weight that you wanted to. You ate that extra candy bar. You had ice cream when you said you weren't going to. And you start beating yourself up instead of being kind and compassionate. What is kindness anyway? I've actually seen some things that talk about the difference between being kind and being nice. I think I read this article, and it was talking about where being kind, basically the bottom line, it was saying being kind comes from your heart and it's real and sincere, and being nice is being phony. Yet, if you look at the definitions, that's not true. That was just someone's take. I saw it. It seemed like it might be getting some traction. So that would be one of those social conditioning things where if it does get traction and people start talking about it, then the perception will be that, oh, being kind is real and sincere and from the heart. But being nice, that means you're fake and you're just doing it to look good. Those are just opinions, and if you look at the definitions of the words, that's not true. Kindness is being nice, but whatever, however you want to look at it. Kindness is about behaving in a way that respects the humanity of humans, others, and you, whether it's in an act of service or speaking to someone kindly or listening to someone who maybe needs to feel heard or vent or bounce an idea off another human, or being kind to yourself, respecting your own humanity. And it is about doing something for someone that you're not obligated to do. You're doing it with no self-interest. You're not doing it because you want people to think you're being nice, but because you're genuinely being kind, and it does come from your heart. Personally, I think being nice is the same thing. If you're being kind or nice just to look good, it's fake. I don't care what words you put on it. So why does it matter? It's really similar to the other things, but here I think I can be a little more specific in that in modern society, we're so disconnected and so divided. It gets discouraging and it starts to feel hopeless for some people. Like, people just think, oh, people are horrible. And then it becomes hard to have compassion. And it becomes this vicious cycle, right? Again, it really all leads to similar things: stress, depression, apathy, hopelessness. Maybe you're feeling hopeless, you just don't care. You're like, well, people are shitty, so who cares? So I'm not going to care about myself. I'm going to eat whatever I want. So then you end up gaining weight, you have health problems, maybe you're eating too much sugar, then that puts you at risk for diabetes. Or you're eating just whatever. You're gaining too much weight, so it puts you at risk for heart disease. Stress does the same, puts you at risk for all kinds of stuff. So it's important because we need to remember that we are all on this earth together. And when we show we care by the things we actually do, showing up for people, doing something truly helpful, kind, and then we see that others care when they do similar things for us, it's uplifting. It literally raises our energy. So it's like strengthening our energy so it pushes through that clay shell. The social conditioning is just mud that's being thrown at us, and then it hardens because we accept it. Oh yeah, this is true. We accept it, it hardens, it becomes a shell. The more that we can boost our energy from the inside out, we're pushing that clay shell off of us. It's breaking and it's making our energy field healthy again and making our body healthy again. All right, so how do you strengthen your kindness muscle? Guess what? It's easy. Practice. Be kind. Think kind thoughts. If you find yourself thinking badly of someone, let's say this guy cuts you off and you're like, screw you. What's your problem? Catch yourself, switch it, and say, take a deep breath and send some love, send some blessings, send some kind thoughts their way. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they're rushing to an emergency. Who knows? Maybe they're just being a jerk. Have compassion anyway. Think kind thoughts. It's like that Mother Teresa quote. Oh, I don't know. It's really long. Basically, it boils down to people will be crappy, love them anyway. I am totally paraphrasing that, though. That is not what she said. Questions to contemplate and journal on, and some exercises, and you can get the download from the show notes or from the episode page on my website. Compassion and forgiveness. We're going to do these two together because they are so closely tied together. Think of one person you hold resentment against right now. And here's a journal exercise. This is the love letters exercise, and it's so cool. Give yourself some time to do this because it might take some time. Give yourself some space. Maybe be alone because who knows what'll happen. Sometimes when you start releasing things, you can get emotional. Maybe you'll get angry. Maybe you'll be yelling. Maybe you'll end up crying. I don't know. Let yourself feel what you feel. It's very important. I always say that. Feel what you feel. Write a letter to this person. You are not going to send it ever. So be completely uncensored. Let it all out. And if you have to burn it afterwards, then burn it. Know that you're going to do something like that so that if you're venting about someone that's maybe in the same house, they might see it. Don't worry about that. You're going to get rid of all the evidence. No, actually, the idea is that how it ends up is a good thing. And this isn't meant for anyone else to see. It's meant for you and you alone. So start venting on the paper in your journal all your anger, hurt, whatever other feelings you have, like your true, real feelings. Just vent them out and feel them. Write it out. Write it out as angrily as you feel it. Release all your valid feelings because they're all valid. Release them onto the paper and allow this letter to flow with all your raw, true emotions. And eventually allow it to start flowing into compassion, where you start to understand this person was doing the best they could. Maybe you know about some circumstances that might have led to it. You can write about that if you want to. Maybe you even think of some ways that you contributed to the situation, or that maybe you hurt them, and you start writing about that and let it flow. And then eventually let it flow into forgiveness. Don't force any of this. Just start writing. Write your raw, true emotions and see where it leads you. Knowing, like, a little bit in the back of your mind that you're going to let it flow into compassion and eventually forgiveness. And I'd love to hear about your experiences. I had this idea one time that it would be kind of cool to have like a whole love letters website, anonymous, of course, where people could post these letters, and they can get awfully long, though. I know I did one that was really long. All right, and then kindness. So we really only have 2 exercises here since we combined compassion and forgiveness. So kindness, real simple here since the other one is really heavy and deep and, big. Start doing random acts of kindness. Do at least one in the next 24 hours and journal about your experience. Send me a voice message and let me know what you did. Voice message on the compassion and the love letters exercise too. I'd like to hear from you. So if you have enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you know who would enjoy it too. I did this one a little differently, and of course I'll go back and edit. I feel like in a couple of places I got into a little bit of a flow state and shared from whatever flowed to me in the moment. A lot that I did not have notes on, especially when it comes to that energetic shell that just came to me. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, thanks for being here with me, and pass this episode along to someone who would benefit from it. And then you can download the companion download with the exercise on compassion and forgiveness and on kindness to help walk you through that a little bit more. Thanks for being with me. Much love, and I will talk to you next time.